Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you are new here. I hope you're all doing so well. Welcome back to another true crime and makeup video. Today I am covering the case of Peter Manuel, which, if you're not familiar, he was a Scottish serial killer who was convicted of killing 8 people, but it's said that he could have killed up to 15 people. And he was also the third last person to be executed in Scotland. So pretty crazy. Bit of history here for you guys. If you like true crime and you like makeup, do not forget to subscribe down below. Also put the notification bell on if you would like to be notified every time I upload, which is 2 to 3 times per week because we're consistent. New cases all the time, interesting cases. The cases that you have recommended, I always get them done as well for you. My Instagram and TikTok will be linked down below if you want to give me a follow, but ultimately just make sure that you subscribe. Also, just a huge thank you for all the love and support on my Edmund Kemper video. I'll link it up here and also down there for you guys if you want to watch. I got so much love on that and so many new subs, so hi, hey, my name's Anna, thank you for subbing to my channel. But I really hope you enjoy this video, and without any further ado, let's get into the case of Peter Manuel. Hi, it is Easter weekend, celebrations are upon us, and this is Sunday. I was out on Saturday night, last night. It was a late one. It was a wild one. If you know me, I don't really drink. Last night I did. And today I'm feeling it. I'm trying to have a green juice to like get the nutrients back in my body, but I'm very much feeling deceased. I'm fully aware of the face, but we're just gonna go by that, okay? So, Peter Manuel, I have words, I have thoughts, feelings and opinions, but let's tell a story. So Peter Manuel was born on the 13th of March 1927, and he was born in New York City, but he was actually born to Scottish parents. That's right, I've got a Scottish case for you guys today, okay? And they very briefly moved to Detroit, Michigan, before then immigrating back to Scotland in 1932. Also, without watching that last bit of video back, I'm pretty sure that I said immigrated back to Scotland, but I meant migrated back to Scotland, so please don't hate me. But when they had migrated back to Scotland, they moved to Birkenshaw in Lanarkshire, which earlier I kept saying Lancashire, and my dad was like, well, he wouldn't be a Scottish serial killer if he was in Lancashire because that's England. So Lanarkshire, Scotland. It was said that Peter was a very bright child. He even won a spot at like this really nice grammar school, but unfortunately that behaviour was not to remain. Peter would change very quickly. And boy does it just go in the crapper. Now, at just 10 years old, Manuel was very well known to the police. They were very aware that he was quite into a life of petty theft at the age of 10. I don't know what I was doing at 10 years old, right? But I'm pretty sure that I still wasn't allowed out my front garden gate. And it just feels even crazier to say that Manuel was known for breaking into like people's houses at the age of 10. The ripe age of 10. Now, after being caught for this house break-in, Manuel was then sent to an approved school, which is basically like a boarding school, but for like the troubled children, like the ones who you don't really know what they're getting up to. Now, somehow at this approved school, Manuel was able to like escape and run away secretly. Like people wouldn't notice right away that he was gone, and then gets to like dinner time and they're like, where is Peter Manuel? Has anyone seen Peter? And he would just be off, right? And he would be able to do this on numerous occasions, and then he was moved away to like a different school, which I think was meant to be a bit more secure. And he just kept running away from there as well. Now, at the age of 14, during one of Manuel's many escapes, he would give people a little insight as to what he was going to become as he grew up. And this was a disgusting human being. So during one of his escapes, 14 years old, he breaks into the house of a woman. And when he breaks in, the goal was kind of to rob her. So he stole her handbag, but the woman was in her house at that point, and she actually seen Manuel exit her bedroom carrying an axe. Yeah. An axe. What do we think he was going to do with that axe in her bedroom? I think he was expecting that she would be in bed asleep, and I'm just saying, you don't need an axe to rob anyone, and you don't need to be in their bedroom if you've already secured the goods. So like, what are you doing? And unfortunately, this woman would go on to suffer from a severe nervous breakdown. Like, this really affected her mental health, and she just completely broke down over it. She never felt safe again, not in her house. Even when she had company, she just did not feel safe. Then, less than a year after this, Manuel was charged on 3 cases of stealing, breaking and entering, and 1 count of bodily harm when he had broken into a woman's house while she slept, went into her room and attacked her so brutally that she actually ended up with a hemorrhage and a concussion. And like, I know, it's like, how can it possibly get worse? But it really, really does. At the age of 15, Manuel was charged with indecently and assaulting one of the wives of one of the workers from his school. He basically struck her, attempted to rape her, he dragged her off into the woods, and he wound up brutally assaulting her so bad that she ended up needing 8 stitches. And for this horrific assault, he pleaded guilty, but it was only to robbery and violence. Like, where's the attempted rape charge, sir? Like, why? Why do they get off on these lesser charges? It makes no sense to me. Make it make sense. It doesn't. So due to this particular charge, in 1943, at just the age of 16, he was sent to Borstal in England, and Manuel would remain there until 1945. When Manuel spent his time in Borstal, they referred to him as a slippery customer, and when I hear like slippery customer, I don't know about anywhere else, but to me that means like a snake, like deceitful, just someone you don't really want to be around, to put it in black and white. And then once Manuel's time was up in Borstal, he did move back to Birkenshaw in Scotland to live with his parents. And back in Birkenshaw is when we're really gonna see just how evil and sadistic this man is. And it is kind of reported, and I'll be honest, this is like a really random fact, right? But it basically says that Manuel did spend some time in Blackpool. He was like a fairground worker, but he couldn't hold this job down very well, so he did end up moving back to Scotland. Then in March 1946, when he was back in Scotland, he faced 1 year's imprisonment for like a house break-in, so break-in and entering. And then he was then sentenced to 8 years in prison because he committed rape whilst on bail. Yes, whilst on bail committed rape gets 8 years. Shouldn't he have got longer? Like, rapists, burn them. Then in October of 1952, he was freed from prison, and according to like an account of his life and like court papers and stuff like that, it did say that he worked for the Scottish Railways for 2.5 years, but then his criminal record came to light, so they sacked him basically. But like, how can you work there for 2.5 years and then it's only just then your criminal record comes to light? Like, where's the DBS checks and stuff? Like, all the background checks that gets done when you start a job. Did that not exist then? It couldn't have. So at this point, Manuel, being sacked, no income, moves back in with his parents. His dad then gets him a job with the Scottish Gas Board, and he does work there until October of 1956. However, he then gets caught breaking and entering, his favourite little pastime, his favourite little hobby, and so he winds up being imprisoned again. So after his 4 years of freedom, he was put back in jail until November of 1957. So now we're going to jump back to the 2nd of January 1956. This night was when Peter Manuel would stalk a young girl by the name of Anne Kneilands, who was only 17 years old. So Manuel followed Anne around an East Kilbride golf course in the Calderwood area, and this golf course doesn't actually exist anymore, thank God. Like, I think it's just horrible when those places still stand when such brutal things have happened to people. But he was basically stalking her and following her around the golf course. Now, the evening that all of this took place, young Anne Kneilands was actually meant to be going to the dance hall. She was meant to have a date, but unfortunately her date never actually turned up. So instead of being there without her date whilst her friends had dates, she decided she was just going to head home for the night. And unfortunately, this is when Manuel began to follow her. Also, I just want to state that a lot of people online, when you look up the case of Anne Kneilands, they obviously say about her date not turning up. We can't blame the date who didn't turn up on Anne Kneilands' death. That's really not fair. They didn't know that if they didn't turn up, that Anne Kneilands was going to be killed, and who's to say that Manuel wouldn't have found her later on anyway. So please, please, please don't say that in the comments, because it's literally no one's fault but Manuel's. So unfortunately, it was on this walk home from the dance hall where Anne Kneilands would horrifically be murdered. Manuel followed her, stalked her, and got her to a place where, followed her so far to a place where he ended up raping her and then brutally bludgeoning her to death. Anne's body, it wasn't found right away. It was found in the January of 1956, but it wasn't until a while after her death that her body would be found. Now, Anne Kneilands would not receive any justice whatsoever for this crime until 2 years after her death. And the annoying thing is, at this point in time, Manuel was a known sex offender in this area, so really he should have been the ultimate suspect. And at this time, he was actually performing work laying gas pipes for his job in this area. And the crazy thing about this is Manuel would turn up to work on the 4th of January with scratches all over his face, where Anne's obviously tried to fight him off and defend herself, and also some of his clothes were missing. So I'm assuming he was wearing his work clothes when he attacked her, and then he's had to get rid of them, and they're like, where's your uniform? But it's just insane to me. And he was questioned for the murder, right? But his dad gave him an alibi. And because he had an alibi, the investigations into Manuel ended up ceasing. No further investigations was done into this horrible man because his dad lied for him. Great, love that. Love a healthy father figure. Listen, I know it's hard for parents when their children are questioned or accused of something like this, but at the end of the day, if my child came in to me and they were like, I'm being questioned for this murder, wasn't me, I am working in the area, and I do have scratches on my face, but that was a cat in the street when I tried to pick up a cat and it scratched me. If my child came and told me this, I'd be like, right, where were you when it happened? If they tell me where they've been and their story cannot be corroborated, I'd be like, right, well, let's just, get your jacket on, hop in the car, I'll take you down the police station and you can give your story to the police and see if they're satisfied. But I'm not going to lie for you, because if you were where you said you were, then we should be able to confirm that. So we're going ahead to the 17th of September 1956. This night, Manuel entered the home of Marion Watt, who was 45, Vivian Watt, who was 16, and Margaret Brown, who was 41. When Manuel entered the home of these women, there was nothing else on his mind apart from just straight up murdering them. He went to all three women and just shot them dead on the spot and then fled the home. And at this point, he is literally on bail for another housebreaking. And I'm thinking, all these housebreakings that he's doing, if he wasn't caught, would he have killed whoever was in that house? I think so. And you know what's so frustrating about this whole thing again is that Manuel was a suspect. He was a suspect in the Watts family murder, but the main suspect in the Watts family murder was actually Marion's husband, William Watt. Now, William Watt at this moment in time, he was away on a fishing trip in Arisaig, but the police believed that William Watt had drove 90 miles during the night, faked a break-in to his family home, and murdered his entire family, and then drove back to Arisaig to act like nothing had happened. That's just doing the absolute most. I'm sorry. I don't see anyone driving 90-mile round trip to fake a break-in, kill their family and then drive back. But I mean, maybe people do that, but I don't think so. And the really frustrating thing about this, right, I appreciate witnesses, and of course there is going to be times where witnesses get things wrong, but the ferryman had actually said that William Watt was on the ferry that night to get back from Arisaig. So he said that he was on the ferry and that he seen him. There was also a motorist on the road who said that he seen William Watt driving on Loch Lomond's side. And this is strange because both of the witnesses were able to pick William out of a police lineup, but it wasn't him. Like, had they just seen him and then thought, I remember him, it might have been that night. Like, if they've been mixed up, they've seen him a different night. Gives me a headache, this one, I'm not gonna lie, I don't get it. I was gonna do it on all my eye, but if I'm absolutely honest, I'm not loving the colour of pink that I chose, so I'm just adding a bit of shimmer. Not that you care, we're here for the crime, Anna. Now, because the ferryman and the motorist were able to pick William Watt out of this lineup, this did result in William Watt being held on remand in Barlinnie prison, which, like, not a great place to be. I've never been, because I ain't a criminal, but I've heard not a place to be. I will say, despite him being held on remand in Barlinnie prison, he was then released 2 months later because there was a lot of confusion. The ferryman was confused as to if he really did see him, and the motorist was like, well, I don't actually know what vehicle he was driving. There was just a whole lot of confusion that was going on, to the point where it was like, well, this can't be the guy, but like seemed like it was the guy, but it's not the guy, you know? And during this period as well, the police were struggling to find a serious motive as to why William Watt would want to kill his family, especially his wife and his daughter and his wife's sister. Like, why would he want to do that? However, they did then discover that Watt was frequently playing away from home, shall we say. He didn't believe in monogamy, apparently, and he was cheating on Marion. So there's a motive, but it still wasn't him. And the police did actually search the Crinan Canal, which was next to the hotel that William Watt was staying in. So they were searching for like a weapon and maybe some bloodstained clothing, but nothing turned up, and the murder weapon was actually found further south anyway. So it's not adding up. Now, police did also confirm as well that when checking the petrol in his car, the petrol level hadn't actually fallen whilst William Watt was apparently making this drive. So they suspected that maybe he had filled up his car along the way. So they suspected a particular route that he would have followed and checked all the petrol stations on that route to see if William Watt had went in that evening to refill. He hadn't, right? No one suspected him. So then they were like, well, if he's not filling up at the station, maybe he had petrol cans full of fuel. So what they decide to do is go along this route again, checking at the side of the road, clearing all the land to see if there was any empty petrol cans, which again, they never found. So it's crazy because William Watt was the main suspect right up until the Smart family murders, when the police were kind of like, this could be a serial killer. Ding, ding, ding. And what's even more shocking about them going so hard for William Watt is during this period of time, if they had convicted him for the murder of his family, he would have been hanged. Yeah, we're in the hanging period. We are in the hanging period of time, and he would have been hanged for a crime he didn't commit. So on the 8th of December 1957, Manuel was actually looking for work in Newcastle upon Tyne, where he had met a taxi driver by the name of Sidney Dunn. Now, it is said that Manuel got in the taxi with Sidney Dunn. It was said that Manuel then shot Sidney and slit their throat, and then the body of Sidney Dunn was actually found on the Northumberland moorland. By the time that Sidney Dunn's body had been found, Manuel was already away back in Scotland. But we should state that Manuel had been in Newcastle upon Tyne 2 days before the murder had occurred, looking for a job. However, it's not really been confirmed if Manuel had stayed in the area for long. Would he have been there long enough to kill Sidney Dunn? No one really knows. The one thing that they thought really nailed Manuel for this particular murder is that one of the buttons off his jacket was found in the cab that was ran by Sidney Dunn. But unfortunately it wasn't really solid enough evidence to say whether it was Manuel or the work of someone else, because people have the same jackets, you know? And then on the 28th of December 1957, a young 17-year-old girl named Isabel Cook was reported missing after she left her Mount Vernon home to go to a dance at Uddingston Grammar School. Now, Manuel stalked Isabel, as he tends to do, stalks his victims, and then he raped and strangled her to death. Now, after Manuel had killed her, he did take her body into the nearby field and buried her, and when he was later caught, he would bring the police back to the spot where he had buried Isabel Cook. And unfortunately for Isabel Cook's case, Manuel wasn't actually suspected at first, as he wasn't with the case of Sidney Dunn, but thankfully we do circle back and we do get him on this case. So remember how I was saying about William Watt being the main suspect in his family murders up until the murders of the Smart family? Now I'm going to tell you what happened to the Smart family. So on the early hours of January the 1st, 1958, Manuel did break into the Smart home. Now in the Smart home we had Peter Smart, then we had his wife Doris Smart, and their son Michael Smart, who was only 10 years old. Manuel done what he normally does. He breaks in during the night and horrifically he shot the family dead in their Uddingston home whilst they slept, including 10-year-old Michael. Now, what I find absolutely shocking about the whole thing with the Smart family murders, like it's horrific and heartbreaking as it is, but Manuel actually stayed in the Smart family home for nearly a week. Yep, with their dead bodies in their beds. Manuel was eating their leftover food from Hogmanay, which is New Year's Eve. If I don't know if that's just a Scottish thing that we call it Hogmanay, I'm not sure. But would eat their leftovers from Hogmanay, and he would also play with their cat, their family cat. And I mean, at least he was feeding the cat, but how dare you sit and play with the family cat of a family that you've just brutally murdered? Now, the really pivotal part of this entire case of Peter Manuel is to do with what he stole from the Smart family home. So there was brand new banknotes, which at this time they weren't very common. So there was brand new banknotes in the house. So it was £35 made with £5 notes, right? And like I said, these were quite unusual. Manuel stole these and then he fled with the family car and then kind of dumped it nearby. And do you know, with the Smart family car, Manuel would actually give a police officer, a police officer who was looking into Isabel Cook's case, the 17-year-old girl that he raped, strangled and buried in the field, her. He gave a police officer a lift and even said that he didn't really believe that the police were looking in the right place. Yeah. Now also, just to confirm, regarding these banknotes that Manuel had stolen from the Smart family home, they were withdrawn by Peter Smart on New Year's Eve. Okay? Bear it in mind. Put it, mental picture, store it. Now, it's so sad, but the Smart family's bodies, they wouldn't actually be found until the 6th of January. So not even that long after Peter Manuel had left their home, they were found. Now, it is also worth stating that the police who were familiar with Peter Manuel, they believed that he could be one of the main suspects, if not the main suspect, which he was, but like they don't know that yet. But they never really had any proof to go on this, so there was really nothing they could do until they were able to get some concrete evidence, but they did suspect that it could have been him committing these murders. So at this point, with the murders of the Smart family, the police are kind of like, right, we need to find out a better way of investigating this. So they decide what they're going to do is retrace the steps of the Smart family the night before they were murdered. New Year's Eve. Now, one thing that they did realise right away was that money had been withdrawn from Peter Smart's bank account. But where had the money went? They searched the house and they could not locate the banknotes anywhere. So they're thinking the person who murdered the Smart family has got to have stolen these banknotes. And he did. This night, Peter Manuel decides, you know what? I've had a tough old week. I need to go blow off some steam, so I'm going to head to the bar. So he heads to a bar in Glasgow and he orders drinks, and immediately the barman is suspicious when Manuel hands over these brand new £5 banknotes. He's really suspicious because these are very, very unusual at the time. So he did feel suspicious enough that he notified the police and just explained, like, listen, this just feels a bit weird. Like, I don't know if it's something you should be aware of, but this guy is just paid in these brand new banknotes and something feels off. The police are like, ding, 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 this could be our man. So the police are able to get these notes from the barman, and by tracing these serial numbers, they were able to find out that the banknotes Manuel had paid for his drinks in were the banknotes that was taken from the Smart home. So January the 14th, 1958, detectives, police investigators and Glasgow CID attended Manuel's Birkenshaw residence where they placed him under arrest. And this was quite a shock to Manuel because he had been sleeping when the police entered his home. So maybe now he knows a bit of the fear when you wake up in the middle of the night to strangers hanging over your bed. And of course, in true serial killer fashion like they all do, tried to maintain his innocence at first. He was like, you've not got nothing on me, so why would I admit to it when you ain't got nothing? However, the police, for leverage, actually arrested Manuel's father. Now, because they'd done this, Manuel is loyal somehow and soon begins singing like Johnny Cash. He confesses to 8 of the murders, but he does not confess to the murder of Sidney Dunn, the taxi driver from Newcastle. At 11:10 that evening, Manuel was formally charged with the murder of the Smart family and also breaking into a home of a family named McMunn. Now, it is also stated that Manuel had taken the police to the field where he had buried 17-year-old Isabel Cook. And when the police had said to Manuel, you know, where is it that you've buried her? Where did you put her? He blankly looked at the police and said, you're standing on her. Now, Manuel did what a lot of these awful, horrific people do, and it's like murder turned lawyer. Like, they suddenly think they're in with the legal jargon, they know how to get themselves off, so he wants to testify for himself in court. He done the usual plead of not guilty, and he tried to state that he was insane. And to sort of show that he was insane, he put on like this big performance where he would like kind of like twitch randomly like that. And I'm not laughing because it's like a funny, well, no, it's funny. It's funny. It's funny that he thought that would work. But he was like twitching and then like staring off vacantly into space, like trying to pretend that he was just not there. Lights on, no one home kind of vibe. Now, Manuel was deemed a psychopath, but psychopathy isn't actually a defence in court. So whilst they said he was a psychopath, they did deem that he was sane and therefore he was fit to stand trial, and he also was fully aware of what he was getting up to. The jury did take up to 3 hours to convict Manuel of the murders, but for some reason the Anne Kneilands murder, that poor girl who we spoke about in the start, her case was inadmissible for some reason, which I don't get. But he was convicted of 7 of the murders, but they do believe he could have killed up to 15 people. So Manuel was convicted in May at the High Court in Glasgow, and he was actually sentenced to death, thank God. Like, say what you want about death penalty, but people like this deserve it, need it, require it, burn them, or in this case hang them. So he did actually put an appeal in June just after being convicted, but of course that appeal failed because he is guilty as charged. And then on the 11th of July 1958, Peter Manuel was killed by hanging, and he was actually the 3rd last person to be hanged in Scotland. And if you're wondering, Anna, who was the last person to be hanged in Scotland? Well, I'm not giving any spoilers because that case is coming for you. It's coming soon. And although this can't be confirmed for definite, it was said that Peter Manuel's last words were, "Turn up the radio and I'll go quietly. He then died at 8:05 a.m. So that is it for another true crime and makeup case. This case of Peter Manuel was a whirlwind. I just felt like I had to do a Scottish serial killer because I'm given like America and Australia and elsewhere a really bad rep. So I was like, do you know what, Scotland? We need to own our own okay, so Peter Manuel, done. I do have some other Scottish cases come in and a couple of really crazy things coming up actually. I think you're going to really enjoy them. Please don't forget to leave your case suggestions down below. Let me know what you would like me to speak about in the next episode. If you aren't already, please subscribe to my channel. I will have all the information down below for what I've used on my face today. My Instagram and TikTok are also linked down below, but as always, I ultimately just want you to like, comment and subscribe to my channel. Put on the notification bell if you don't want to miss when I upload. I do upload 2 to 3 times per week consistently, so like if you're not subscribed and you love true crime and a bit of makeup, what are you doing? Subscribe. But I hope you enjoyed this video, and until the next one, I'll see you later. Bye!